They just moved it.
That sort of makes sense.
Wait till I see my smiling face on that little screen down there. Hello?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, hi, Delisa. I guess we're live. So,
I am alive.
I guess we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Get going there.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See, you've never been to a planning board meeting, James. I usually am the loudest one, so oh, that's all right.
My coach, please.
All right. Okay, great. We have 6 o'clock. Welcome all to our June 8th, 6 o'clock planning board meeting. I'll start with board business, member updates. Anybody have anything they want to share? Jeff?
The open space OSPCR or whatever I couldn't attend their last meeting, but they approved a survey that will go out to town residents. It's pretty extensive, so just alerting everyone, take the survey, send it, I think it's middle of June it comes out. Do you know when it's coming out, Mary?
No.
Okay, yeah.
Bartlett?
I tuned in to the Conservation Commission hearing this week, and there was a guy, an engineer representing the Highway Department, talking about widening Foster Street from Taylor down to Grimes. I didn't know about that, so.
Yeah, we have federal funds for that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
the next,
They're gonna widen the right-of-way and narrow the lanes,
oh, nice.
so there'll be a bicycle.
Bike and pedestrian.
Path to one side,
Right, the multi-use path.
Yeah,
and that's phase one of
many phases out
many
there.
phases.
Anna, do you have anything?
The last CPC meeting I attended, a couple of folks from that committee are going to be talking with Select Board in reference to how to proceed with any kind of an increase. And so I just wanted to touch base with Jeff. I think you're going to be on CPC, right?
Yeah.
And is that like immediately or after your?
I thought it was a date specific, like when, I think the appointment runs out June 30th or something, but I have to go, I guess I have to go get sworn in
Yep.
and, I'll go to Diane and ask her what.
Okay, that'd be a good idea. So
And
we
you got
cover it.
reappointed to the Affordable Housing Trust?
And I got reappointed as the town administrator's designee for Affordable Housing Trust for 2 years. Yep.
Okay, and as we were just talking, the water and sewer people are working to try to finalize the tri-party agreement, which was discussed on Monday night, and pretty close to getting that all squared away.
Town council's working on it right now.
Perfect. And I think that's all I have. I talked to Myron about, I know the Lapoli Company wants to come in and start moving forward. They want to do an A&R like we did at the Point, so they can get funding for each individual phase of it. So they're going to be coming before us probably in July, I think, to start working on the breaking up the bigger parcel into little parcels so that they can fund it. So we should be seeing that soon. I think that's all I have. Town planner update, staffing, grant applications, hazardous mitigation plan.
Yep, staffing, have met again with HR Director Michelle Vibert on how to refresh the search for assistant town planner. I'm away next week, but after that, we'll jump into that again.
Okay.
See if we can.
We have the money, we're all set to do it. We just need the candidate now.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. We're qualified candidates for the, in the hiring range that we're allowed to hire in.
Actually, I should, Delisa, do you have anything? I forgot your remote.
No, that's okay. No, actually, I don't. I have to find out who's been appointed by the Select Board to MPIC, so we can get back on track there. But other than that, no, I have nothing to
Okay.
report.
Cool.
Okay, and then the grant applications, the town did submit to Community One Stop grants, the big one for $8.5 million for town sewer. Big thank you to Rick Freiberg of TEC for doing the heavy lifting on that grant application. And then the second grant application was for, to use the town meeting $30,000 town meeting appropriation from this spring for the zoning diagnostic, to use that as the local match for a hopeful grant, for a grant application for diagnostic recodification and GIS work, to roll that into a bigger project. That application. And then the hazard mitigation plan, MAPC is the chosen consultant, and they're working with the town administrator's office and have scheduled the first kickoff meeting for that. And that's generally town staff with limited, with some public input, but it's more on the hazard mitigation side. So it's a lot of fire and DPW input for that kind of work. That's what I had. And then I did throw together a potential planning board meeting schedule for the rest of the year. I'll send that around for everybody's input and
Hopefully.
go from there.
Mhm.
So I do have copies here, but if you want to start looking at them.
Okay.
I didn't remember that for Delisa to see everything, I have to share. So I'm not prepared to share that document yet. Well,
Why 2 meetings in July?
because MBTA communities.
Oh, yeah, okay. Never mind.
When
Okay.
in July are you looking at it?
July 6th would be the regular meeting, and then the 20th would,
Okay.
well, that's the date of throwing out there, I just need to find out.
The 20th, okay. So Maren, I heard you say something with my name. You said you're not ready to publicize it, or can you email me the schedule?
I can email you the schedule, I just can't, it would take me a couple minutes to get to the file to share it on screen.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, sometime in the next couple days, that would be great.
Here it is, Delise, you want to look at it, so you see it, is that good? All right, before we move on to board, are you all done, Maren?
Yes, thank you.
Moving forward, can we add input from resident input to our agenda for board business? Not that there's anybody here, but in the off chance that somebody does show up, that they have a chance to speak, so we can add that as a regular kind of thing. Anna suggested that, and makes perfect sense, which we would never deny anybody if they came to a meeting to ask anyway, but we should put it on there.
Along with the stipulation of how much time they get and
2 minutes, that's it. We'll allocate 10 minutes and they get 2. Okay,
So it's set up similar to the select boards.
exactly. Mhm. Minutes from the last meeting, anybody have any questions or concerns about the May 18th meeting? Anyone, everybody think it's good? Somebody make a motion to
Make a
approve
motion
it
to approve the minutes of May 18th.
as presented?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Bills? I keep forgetting you.
2 bills, one from Green International, and the second is for reimbursement for when I attended the American Planning Association National Conference.
Do I get my money back for the breakfast with Sal thing?
Send you,
I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. I think the water department's gonna pay for it anyway. All right, so while we sign the firearm zoning bylaw, we had a little bit of a glitch in it, and Marin's will walk us through how we have to fix it.
yeah, we did get
Oh, yeah.
approval from the Attorney General's office for the bulk of the firearms business zoning bylaw. They did catch a scrivener's error. There was wording in one section that didn't match the wording in the table, in table of uses. So we need to go back and make the correction in the table of uses. And the Attorney General had questions about how a special permit would be, quote, terminated, which is, we use the words termination in the bylaw language. Town Council recommends we change that to revocation and just follow the state requirements for revoking a special permit.
Okay, so we need to schedule that. Can we get to it for get it in July's?
I would recommend you do it as soon as possible.
Okay.
That way we can get the hearing notice published.
Okay, so,
They also added a hearing, if there is a revocation, a hearing for the person who's, which I think that's
Right.
reasonable.
yeah.
Right, which is the state recommended process for.
Okay, so why don't we put that on for the July meeting?
Okay, I just ask for a vote that you vote to schedule the public hearing for July.
I so move.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Is that good enough?
Yeah.
I keep forgetting she's coming from left field. Annual signature authorization?
Yep, the once-a-year letter from accounting that says, asked if the board would rather have one signature on bills and payroll, or rather have the whole board. Actually, payroll is done now through the department, and hopefully we can leave it that way, so it doesn't come back to the board. Town meeting votes at the beginning of the year, the budget that you recommended, so I have to stay within that.
So right now,
This is
the,
for the bills.
yeah. Anyone have a problem with one signature, well, not even a signature, really? The,
Well, so we need a signature for payroll, and we need another one for accounts payable. So this is how we're doing accounts payable.
if you want to keep it this way,
That's fine.
that's fine, we can keep that, but the signature for payroll, why don't we continue with,
Well, right now it's a department head.
right?
But there
Doesn't
is,
come to the board.
well, who's your department head, though?
I've been signing off on the payroll,
So you're signing off on your own payroll?
on the department payroll, yes. I mean, the department head always signs off on their own payroll.
Well, we used to sign off on your payroll.
I used to sign off on their payroll.
No, we used to, as a
Right,
board, we
exactly.
used to.
And then it was,
Exactly, and then the town has tried to streamline the payroll process because it does.
I would get a DocuSign to do it the last,
Yeah.
and then, actually Ed was signing it when he was here, right? I don't have a problem if you continue to sign off unless, because the select board all looks at it anyway, because it's all within the budget. So I have no
Yeah.
problem. If you want to have them sign off on it, I got no problem with that either.
So
You-
it's up to the board, it just.
What do you care?
I don't think we should be signing off on payroll. It seems clumsy and
Okay.
time-consuming.
Would you rather Maren keep signing it, or would
Sure.
you?
Or whomever is in that.
Well, she signs for everybody.
I sign my payroll sheet, and then that gets
Yeah.
put in with the land use department sheet.
Right.
Well, without there being a department head, I recognize that you're in,
Interim head, or whatever you want to call it right now.
right.
Informal
But
acting.
It seems like if you also have a direct line to Ryan, that Ryan should be signing off on your payroll. So,
Does he want
Well,
to?
I'm fine with Maren signing it, you know. I mean, like you said, Mark, the select board signs off on it, and I don't see an issue with it, so I'm with Jeff on that.
does the select board sign off on it? I didn't know that select board
On
signed
all
off
of it,
on it.
yeah.
All the accounts.
Yep.
I'm
Violet?
fine with Maren signing.
Okay. Why don't we just leave it the way it is, and you sign it, send it to Ryan, and he just checks it and makes sure everything's,
No,
yeah,
the payroll department does that.
the whole pay, yeah, okay. Cool, so why don't we,
And it's all public record if you ever want to see it.
Yeah.
It's just- try
we need to vote it, or are we good?
So you want to keep accounts payable, comes to the board,
Yep.
and payroll goes through the department process.
Correct. No change, okay. Great. Anything else? We're a little late. We have an A&R for 12 Elizabeth Street. Lot line changes, no new lots. Is there anybody here to speak on this, or is this
Yes,
just
ma'am.
us winging
That
it?
would be me.
You want to talk about it, or you want to see if we...
No, I mean, it's pretty basic. Brian is my neighbor, he's buying a little piece of property from me, and that's it. That's it.
Which is the piece that he's buying?
Parcel.
I couldn't tell. Parcel A?
This is
Okay.
parcel A, yeah.
Okay.
This is Brian, this is me, and I
Yeah.
still have 1.1 acres.
Okay.
And there's no frontage involved in it, it's just to make your lot,
Do we have
Bigger.
a special
your yard bigger.
pen, or can we use just,
We need,
So now that is the consent as well.
Delisa, do you have any problem with this?
Nope,
Can you even see it?
yes, I can.
All right, you see Lot A up in the corner? It's just making,
Yes, I do.
Jimmy is being a nice guy and wants to give his neighbor a bigger backyard, actually. Yeah,
Yeah, I looked at it before the
Yep.
meeting, so I don't have an issue.
and it doesn't involve creating a new frontage lot or buildable lot or anything else. It's just to have the neighbor have more land area, more land to mow.
So I do have a quick comment on the application. Item number 7 needs the deed address and the date, and then it's good to go.
Kevin Kuno, the surveyor filled that out, but I can do that absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Well, he needs all of that in order for them to transfer it anyway. So, good. So, can you make us copies of this once you've recorded it so that we have it? Just a paper
Well,
copy.
actually, just electronic.
All right, good.
To
So
date it.
recommend a vote on approving the A&R.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the parcel A being combined with,
So you're just voting on the A&R plan
right, parcel A,
for lot, number 12, Elizabeth.
lot 53. Okay,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Pretty late,
Aye.
3 of us are done.
And Delisa, did she,
Delisa, do you,
we just need
Yes,
her
I
vote.
said aye.
she said aye, but she doesn't need to sign it. 4 is more than enough. Yeah, so just take this, get us a copy.
You got it.
Just drop it off at Myron's at whenever you get a chance.
Yep. And how do you want me to handle the application piece? Want me to just reprint it out and get it to you, Myron? It goes on number 7.
Sure.
Melissa?
Yep, that'd be fine.
How do I do that? Number 7?
Right there, you can see what that is.
Perfect.
That's no big deal, you need it for,
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
roll it, you don't want to fold it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You're done.
Can I take this?
I think so, I don't think I had anything on it. Yeah, no, you can have that if you'd like. Thank
I'll
you.
get this filled out and get it to you.
All right,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
610, discussion with Dave Guthrie, Durkey Farmhouse, the 5-acre parcel at 260 Foster Street, Grimes Lane, lot status. Mr. Guthrie, thank you for joining us.
Nice to see you all. Dave Guthrie, Grimes Road LLC.
Did you keep the pen?
There are 2 issues tonight. One is, I made a donation to, I think, the Affordable Housing Trust relative to our A&R lots back 3 or 4 years ago. During that process, we ran up against, I would say, a difference of opinion relative to some off-site work that a department in town thought we were required to do. That subsequently kicked out some of the work that we needed to do to close on some houses, fall of 2021. We were delayed till the spring, April of 2022. We carried some additional carry costs there, and we had some legal costs in order to clean that up. It did clean up under our interpretation, but I come back before you tonight, instead of the $70,000 that I volunteered to donate, I'd like to move that back to the $50,000, which was my original donation. However, I was encouraged that original night to move that 50 to 70 because I was a little late on a phone call, which I acquiesced because I do enjoy working with the town. However, the situation that unraveled that fall left me a little bitter, and I would like to recover some of that cost that I lost doing so.
How about we make it 60, each in the middle?
I'm really comfortable at the 50, although I do appreciate your negotiations. I anticipated this, Mr. Montanari. It was troubling. We lost closing dates. We had to make concessions to buyers there. It was unfortunate.
So can you explain to us, I mean, that don't know the background, what the issue with the town was?
There was an understanding with the public utility that we were going to carry certain utilities all the way down to Foster Street, down Grimes, which was not part of our decision in either the Grimes, or the K, or the Durkey decision. I think it was a misunderstanding there, because at the time, we were working with DOT in the town and Mr. Arcero's office to potentially realign Grimes Road through the farmhouse and have it aligned directly across the street from the entrance to the train station. versus where it empties now adjacent to the train tracks, which is considered unsafe. So there was some confusion, I think. It wasn't in our decisions that we would run this utility down to Foster, but there was a question, I think, in one of the hearings that I came in for an update. They asked about that. I was speaking to the potential realignment, not necessarily the utility run down the street. The utility run down the street was a far more complex scenario than simply running a utility down Grimes Road. You have an aged culvert under the tracks adjacent to the train, and you have a huge conservation area that would have required some filling, widening, and permission from Conscom. So our intention was never to bring it down there. We were, however, willing to work with the town on some land donation for additional parking and a relocation of that farmhouse if in fact the road did get realigned, but it wasn't our intent to provide those utilities.
So what's the status of the realignment? That's just,
It's dead.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's
it
no
needs
money
funding.
for it.
It's probably, at the time, $750, now it's over $1 million, and the DOT's explanation to us, we had multiple meetings with them, was that most of their money was going to the Alewife station versus these little incidental
Yeah.
train crossings all over the state. They've got hundreds of these, so, that has moved on. I don't know that it's going to get resurrected.
Okay.
The hearing at the Conservation Commission did mention that they were going to realign Grimes a little bit. I don't know how much, but they were going to move it away from the tracks because of the safety issue.
I had heard that piece at the end.
Yeah,
Part of that land that would be required, I think, to be taken as part of
part of the 5
step 2 of
acres.
tonight's conversation, the 5 acres that be in.
Yeah.
I think it was post-culvert, between the culvert needs to be upgraded, but the post-culvert to Foster, you have the ability to sway that thing over a little bit, not in compliance with the adjacent intersection for the train, the station entrance, but certainly making it better. Right now, it's adjacent to the tracks, which is obviously a dangerous situation.
But who's gonna pay for it and,
Well, that would be part of the federal, state money that's involved with the Foster Street
with the
project.
Foster Street part?
I think when Mr. Stoddard was here, I certainly won't speak for him, but I do know that when he was talking about that realignment from Taylor all the way down to the intersection that's past Grimes, I don't know the name of it, that they did talk about maybe moving that over slightly to help someone. You know, it really should be aligned with
Yeah,
the train station.
The design plans for Foster Street do call for upgrading the very end of Grimes Lane.
So just-
But that's just a couple of feet, but it would still possibly impact the septic system or the slope down from the septic system.
On
Oh,
the
yeah.
farmhouse?
Yeah,
No, I don't believe so.
No.
No, there's a
No.
wetland between the farmhouse septic
Okay.
and this crossing that you speak of, this realignment that you speak of, yeah.
okay.
This is right where all the pucker brush is, right where the,
Right at the end.
yeah.
Right at the end.
Yeah.
There are mailboxes down there, which we've since, we put the group mailboxes in Grimes for Durkee and Kay and the Grimes folks, and also the Grimes folks down the road. We added enough mailboxes in there, so if they wanted to go to the postmaster and get themselves access to get rid of their mailboxes that are down at the end of Grimes and Foster. Because it's busy down there,
Yeah.
and there's no sidewalk, so. But it's that area where their mailboxes are, you can sway into that.
So the question is, are we comfortable with the 50,000 that he offered us 2 years ago?
Now, does that include, there was $20,000 that we got just, the Housing Trust got just recently.
The 50's paid,
Okay.
so you have the 50.
Yeah.
We also widened, after that donation, we had a site visit, and on the site visit, you asked us to widen Grimes down past the farmhouse, which we did as well.
I'm gonna defer to, you're on Affordable Housing Trust, Anna has been on that, so I think since you were benefiting from that amount, I think your opinion might hold more sway than mine. I have no trouble with the 50.
Yeah, I think the 50 was, I would have loved the 70. I understand the mitigating circumstances why you feel that 50 is probably more than generous. I have no problem with the 50. It's already, the Affordable Housing Trust already has it. It's not like it's hanging out there. I'm good with the 50. I don't know about you, Bartlett.
Don't like to lose 20 grand, but I understand that there are difficulties in this kind of job.
Well, can we get the 20 grand from Littleton Electric since
No, that's what the whole issue is, but without going there.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. What about you, Anna?
Well, I recall the conversation very clearly, and it certainly felt like you were uncomfortable at that time in terms of the donation piece of it. And I remember asking you if you were okay, and you said yes, so.
You did, yes. And at the time I was. I would have preferred the 50 originally, but I was encouraged to move to 70, which, again, the town's been very good to us up until this. The town's been very good to us, so I was comfortable with the 70. I would like to recover the 20 if I could.
All right, well, and we'll have other topics to discuss, so that would be fine to move it back to the 50.
Delisa, do you have an issue?
I mean, I'd much rather see the 70 or 60, but, you know, I'll go with what everybody else is
Okay.
advocating.
I'll entertain a motion to tell Mr. Guthrie that the 50 that he's given us will satisfy what we had talked about 2 years ago with the realignment of the lots on Grimes Lane. Somebody second me.
what?
Somebody's got to second it.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Reluctantly, aye. I tried to get the 20.
Thank you
but-
for your understanding, I appreciate it.
All right, next is,
Step 2 is the farmhouse. You know, there were a couple things that we needed to do. One was again, there was, the offer on the table was if Grimes got realigned, we would put a foundation in on the other side of the barn. You would move the farmhouse over there, we'd put a new septic in. That fell dead. We decided to move forward. We put the septic in out behind the farmhouse. We went through conservation to do that. We are applying for the COC from conservation Friday. We'll submit Friday. They'll obviously have their review period. So that system's in, and it replaced the system that was there. It's a 3-bedroom system. The Board of Health is reluctant to sign off on that because there's a well out there somewhere, and they want the well terminated because we stubbed the water line from the water line that we installed on Grimes. We stubbed it at the lot line for that home. Depending on what you do with it, you can size the water line that goes into that home, but you won't have the well there any longer. But they need the well abandoned. We can't find it. We have no history of it, we have no record of it, we can't find it. We're willing to abandon it in the future if you do find it, because it is going to be a condition. The Board of Health reached out to Maren to reach out to Town Council. Town Council, I won't speak for you, but Town Council's opinion is that it needs to be abandoned by the developer. We're handcuffed. So the system's in compliance, not signed off. And we'd like to convey the house, we're done. We're ready to move on.
Why does the Board of Health think there's a well if it can't be found and there's no record of
It
it?
was a habitable house and there wasn't
Okay,
town
so there
water.
must have been
Yeah,
water
there must have been a
somewhere.
well. We just don't know where it is. We can't find it. We looked everywhere.
Was it could it have been a spring?
We never turned water on in the house.
Okay.
So we have no idea. No idea. But, that being said, the obligation for us is to turn you over a septic. We'll hold our obligation. If you find that well and needs to abandon, we'll go out and abandon it for you.
you can't abandon it in the house by cutting the pipes, right? You actually have to find the well.
That's my understanding, because of its potential proximity to the septic. So if somebody were to resurface it, use it for irrigation, decide to tap it back into the house, it would be in violation of Title V. So they want it removed or abandoned in place. We don't know how to do that.
Do you see where it leaves the house?
I honestly have never been in the
Okay,
basement.
okay.
Yeah, but I'll give you this on public record, that if you find it, we will abandon it for you.
Okay. At the very least, we can get a letter that states that the existing well at the house can never be used anyway. Can we put that in there too?
I think this, if you were to come up with some language and direct town council to advise Board of Health that you're taking this over, it's an affordable project, it's gonna be fully renovated, I think, you know, could they issue a letter that says to you that the system we installed is in compliance, however, they can't sign it yet? That would alleviate us or you of our concern whether we did it correctly or not, and we believe that to be done correctly. So that allows you to take the home in whatever form you like and proceed with whatever you're doing with it.
Okay.
So just so I understand, what you're saying is that you need to be able to close off this well, they can't be found, but if it is found, that you will come in and at your cost, you will make sure that you get it tied off to ensure it's, okay.
We'll abandon it at our cost if you find it.
So at the very least, we'll get a letter through town council that says that the well is abandoned now, will be abandoned if it's found, so that at least we can take title to the house while we look for the well. But the
And
guy,
if Myron sends me that letter, I'll sign it.
Okay.
No problem with that.
So the overall conveyance to the town is going to be the 5-acre parcel, the farmhouse, and the barn,
Correct,
and everything has a new septic system.
correct.
Okay.
And a water line, the water main stopped at the lot line. So if you decide to make that a multifamily or need a 2-inch water line, you can run that to the home. It's
right
very easy.
there.
So this is going to Conscom for what reason?
The septic repair is in the buffer zone. So we needed a permit from conservation in order to build the septic. So now we're merely going back to say that the lawn over the septic is stabilized. We can now close out the order conditions.
So they're ready to get it signed off, they just can't find the well.
There's two parts. One is Board of Health sign off, you can't find the well. The other is conservation, this is routine. Once the area is stabilized, then they issue a certificate of compliance.
Could you do it through a deed restriction saying no on-site well
Well,
in use or something?
I think if we get council to write a letter that there will be no well to this
Because it's
property,
the Board of Health that's,
being a stickler about it. And I get it, because it might be too close to the septic, I get that, because it's gotta be
I
within
think
100.
if the town sticks their nose in it a little more to say, we're going to, in some agency is going to have ownership of this, and we will ensure that we do our best to close this out. They're not going to take it from us.
So last but not.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Well, I was just going to ask, again, because of mitigating circumstances and other projects that we've seen, if there is an issue that Conscom comes up with before they close anything out, I mean, should we have Mr. Guthrie be responsible for that, or is that then?
He
Permit
can't,
stays with me.
he can't come and give it to us until that's
Yeah.
closed out.
Okay.
Permit stays with me, and if you were to close, if you, for instance, wanted to close tomorrow, we do this all the time. We indemnify you until we close out the order conditions.
Okay.
We do it on houses all the time. In this particular case, it's really when you're ready for it. We're ready for you to take it. But I would assume this is routine, next meeting, I would assume.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's a violation there, they're gonna hold it, we're responsible for it.
Right, so there's two different bodies that would have to act in order for Mr. Guthrie to donate the property to the Affordable Housing Trust, because the planning board can't hold property, but the trust can without any select board or town meeting vote required. But the trust has to be willing and able to accept it. The one recommendation I got from town council was further down the road, when the trust is ready to dispose of the property, sell it, whatever, just to consider going back to the Durkey Farm Estates approval, and asking the planning board to amend the condition, because the Durkey decision was conditioned on that parcel being used as a farm or open space. You issued a second approval for K that superseded the Durkey decision, and says to be used for affordable housing purposes, to be donated to the town to be used for affordable housing purposes. That might cause a cloud on the title. So town council recommends going back and through that again and just looking at it again. But that would be for the trust to petition the planning board to work through that. But the town council saw no other reason to not move forward. I think, sorry for the double negative.
So we need to talk to the Affordable Housing Trust
So
people
it's actually the trust that would have to vote to accept the property.
to see what they want to do with the disposition of it. Whether they want to try to renovate it, or whether they want to try to sell it and have somebody come in and try to build it as a home, or whether we want to keep it as a farm, maybe a community farm or something like that. I think we need to
Right.
put some time out on next affordable. Since three of us are on the affordable, housing, we need to have an idea of what the final disposition of it, because
Right.
we're not real good at the town doing this kind of stuff.
Town, yeah, seems to have issues with.
Yeah, so I think from an affordable housing trust, we're gonna get it, then we need to decide what, to or you do, Barla, you need to decide what to do with it, it's all on you. So, but no, I think at our next meeting, we have to figure out
Yeah.
what we wanna do with it.
So what is the process for us to convey this?
We'll get town council to figure out how to do it. I don't know, send us over,
to me.
send the
I'll
deed.
give it to anyone.
Yeah, I know you're anxious, huh? So, yeah, we'll get that squared away for
Okay,
you,
so-
for our next meeting.
Yeah, perhaps our attorney can talk to town council as to what name you're going to take, and then
Yep.
we'll compare a deed.
Yep,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, and
For your review.
we'll put it on for next month, is that good?
Next
July.
month. Planning?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's fine.
and we meet the 22nd of
We're meeting the 22nd.
Second on affordable housing.
So why don't we'll schedule it for that, so the Affordable Housing Trust can speak about what
We'll
they,
have to amend that agenda then.
recommend what to do with it then.
I think, if I may, with all due respect, we're not terribly concerned with what the Affordable House Trust does with it.
Absolutely.
I think if you could provide direction tomorrow, and that our council could talk to town council to draft a deed for your review.
Yep,
And then perhaps even that night, everybody's comfortable with the deed, and we transact shortly after that.
yeah, you don't care what the Affordable Housing, you just want to give it to us, and that's the entity that's going to ultimately take it. And then what we do with it after that is up to us,
So we'll
okay?
work on a draft deed.
Okay,
I had one more question.
Okay.
So, Mr. Guthrie, as far as you know, is there anything that ties that particular parcel to the Durkey Farm HOA?
We had
We had this discussion, I don't remember, is it tied?
We believe that Lot 1, which is this parcel, is part of the homeowners association.
Okay, that should maybe be a modification back to planning board, it doesn't need to be in there. It's not part of the road, it's not, it is part of the mail system, but there's open space there as well that HOA pays for annual mowing.
So it seems like that piece would need to be
That's gonna be something you
clarified.
decide if you want to have these people pay into that open space, because it does surround this parcel. Some of that open space that gets maintained does surround this parcel, so that's going to be a choice of the housing trust if they want to come back and petition the planning board. We put it in, as you remember, Mara touched on this, in a 5-acre minimum, no subdivision, because that's the minimum agricultural acreage to have animals. We did this in a couple of different towns in order to save a farmhouse and a barn. It
Yep.
worked very well, so that was what we did then. But now you have the potential to do, in fact, more affordable housing there if you want, so I would think you'd want to relieve yourself from that.
Okay.
obligation.
we'll get that squared away too. Great. So we'll put you on, do you want to put a time specific now, or
And for the July
6th meeting?
July 6th meeting, is that what you said?
Yeah, I know,
I
I know.
I do have a vacation plan that week, but I guess how much of this involves me if we get you a draft deed for conveyance?
You don't have to be here.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I think we'd read it and make notes on it, or,
As long as everything's done before the 6th, which it should be, if
Yeah, it should be.
both
We
councils
won't have
work
to
on
help, but we should have confirmation.
Okay.
yeah.
That should be easy.
it. Okay. Yeah, you don't have to be here, you can.
I guess
Cody?
I would just say that it is also helpful to have the applicant or applicant's representative here, so I don't know if,
You can call in. I do a vacation plan, but I'll call in that night if you want,
Okay,
if that helps. If you have
I was
questions.
gonna say, or your attorney if they're available.
They're not gonna know the nuances of this, history of this, if I send my.
let's just hope that everything's all done so that we don't have any, we've been at this for a couple of years, I think we were at the end of it.
Yeah. It took a little while to get through conservation. They were merely doing their job in order to get that system built. That took a while, and we understand it's not typical you get to. use
Why don't we do it
buffer
this
zone.
way? Why don't we leave it for the 6th, and if there's a hiccup and it's not gonna work, we also have a July 20th
Fair.
meeting, so we'll put it on that
Yeah,
one.
works for me.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it like that. Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, nice to see you. Thank you.
6:15, thereabouts. Final bond release, Crawford Commons.
Yep. Papers to hand around.
Oh,
The large one is just the final punch list for Crawfcom, and it shows everything is taken care of. The new photos that came along with that email today from Green International, the one that shows the bound is fairly flush, one that shows the improvements to the stone walkway, and then the one tree that has not survived the planting process, that the developer's team sent me 2 emails today indicating that they will replace the tree.
how much are we holding?
It's a tri-party agreement, and I don't have the full amount at the top of my head.
They're asking for it all, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, I mean, if we're going to be releasing it, we do need to know what the amount is, so.
Obviously, it's all the money.
Right, because their original bond was 692,000, so we should have a better sense of what that number is.
Yeah, and the board could vote to release the remaining bond.
But I want to know how much it is.
But there's only one item left, and it's a tree. Everything else has been taken care of.
Right.
So whatever the amount is,
They're entitled to it all,
been
taken care of.
taken care of.
Well, that's fine, but it should be part of the record, though, right? I mean, that we're,
It's part of the record of the subdivision, it's just not something I have available for the meeting at this moment. For it.
Nobody's here for Croft Common right now.
But no, they were planning on attending. This request is 3 months old.
I know.
I don't have it.
So it would be the entire amount?
Probably, yeah. Wow.
That's a little disproportionate.
Well, they never asked for any back. And they waited till it was all done, so.
Get their attention.
You're not gonna hold 620,000 for a tree. No. You would? It's one hell of a tree. Delisi, do you have any problem with releasing
No,
whatever the
no,
bond number is?
no.
No.
Release it, yeah.
Okay. I have no problem with it, whatever it is. If it's the full amount, I don't think they've ever come in before us. I don't remember.
I would word it as the remaining bond.
The remaining bond amount, all the work has been done. Release the remaining bond, whatever. If it's,
And the town meeting has accepted
accepted the
the
road.
road.
Yep.
and it's-
Yep, so there's no reason to hold it, so whatever the number is, if it's, let's just say it's a 620.
it's not 620.
Don't,
Now, I have some vague recollection
I
of
don't
that
know.
guy coming in.
Or whatever the
I
fund.
mean,
I mean, if they're not
Let-
here,
let
obviously it's
that
not that
bond-
important to them.
no, actually, it's very,
I mean, seriously.
Well, it's not real hard cash, they're using an insurance policy to do it, so.
which they
Right.
cost
Cost some money, yeah. So how about if we just make a motion to approve the remaining balance of the bond for Croft Common?
I think it's bad process for us to just do that.
And if you would like me to confirm with the chair and vice chair the exact amount, I can get to those files, and I'd be happy to do that.
Okay?
That would be
we do
great.
that. Why don't we vote it right now, though, subject to the one tree being replaced? I'll make a motion.
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Okay. Okay. Continue public hearing 254, 256, 260 Air Road, Water Resource District, Special Permit, Major Commercial, Site Plan Review, Stormwater, RAS Structure, New Retail, Motor Fuel Outlet, Energy Group North.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Chris Tamula, I'm the project manager with Green and Peterson, and here with me tonight is Heather Montford from our traffic division. Since our last meeting, we basically addressed the Green International's comments. I think the board was in a good place last meeting, but obviously Warner wasn't here. The changes to the plans are very minor in nature. We did add a couple of no idling allowed signs over by the diesel canopy and the diesel parking in the rear. And additionally, I'll just hand out a couple copies of some plans. So we got Green International's review, and their only outstanding item was with regards to the sidewalk connection to the road. They wanted to make sure that it was ADA compliant, so we submitted a draft plan to them last week. And so that, I'm just gonna pass it out so so the board can see that that's been done.
This one there.
I see DEP's out there already doing drainage and everything else out there already.
That's not the, that's not us, but yeah.
No, I know, it's,
Yep.
yeah.
So we, so like I said, we did submit this back to Green. I think all their other comments were relative to comments that we discussed at the last hearing. And then additionally, I submitted a waiver request based on the discussion at the last hearing with regards to that one catch basin and the stormwater. I provided that to Maureen, so that's in the town's records as well. I believe we've done everything the board's asked, and we're hopefully ready to close the hearing and hopefully get a favorable decision.
Board have any questions or concerns?
On the green sheets, there were a lot of, there was a series of comments about the septic design and the sewer treatment, and that is still under design, and
Correct.
the design will be finished at some point.
Correct, we have to submit to the Board of Health, and that's pretty standard. We have some placeholders on the plan. We can't move forward with construction until we get that.
Do we need to make it conditional, or can we just let the Board of Health?
Well, they can't do anything until they get a septic. They have to,
Right.
Well, you could condition that if the design of the septic resulted in a change of the site plan, then they would have to come back.
we can do it that way, sure.
I mean, there will be, again, we're showing a placeholder for,
Right.
septic tank locations, and,
Understand.
I mean, obviously, we will have a brand-new septic design, which would have
Sure.
some minor impacts to the utility layout, but again, it's nothing that the board would have any real concern about at all.
Right, I'm always hesitant to ask the planning board to include conditions that relate to
That's
other
fine.
boards'
That's fine.
jurisdictions, because
Okay.
at the building permit phase, it
Phase, though.
needs sign-offs from each
Yeah.
of, it needs the site plan, it needs the conservation, well, this one doesn't need the conservation approval, but this one in particular needs MassDOT approval, and they have their jurisdiction outreaches the
Local.
planning boards for anything to do with the roadway and anything within the right of way.
They can't do anything until they get all their approvals.
Sure.
We can sign it, we can do everything, they can't do a thing with it until we're done, so.
Bartley, you're talking about the septic or
Septic, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the process was in terms of approvals.
So we're basically approving the site plan special
Yeah.
permit subject to the septic being approved by the Board of Health,
Yeah.
which is their jurisdiction. Any other questions or concerns?
So I had just a few more. I wanted to make sure, because I keep going back to this whole issue about the exceeding the 15% trip generation and the left-hand turn lane. So are we in essence providing a waiver on those? Because the last time when you were here to talk about them, you provided an explanation, but it seemed like MassDOT still had to rule on both of those issues. Is that right?
No, for the record, Heather Monica with GPI. It's not, it's 50% pass, it was 50% pass by that we were using, right? Is that what you're talking about, the green international?
Peer review number
question?
7 and 10.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So what they were saying were that we exceeded 15% of the adjacent street traffic, because they, Green, was only counting the traffic on Air Road. But what we said in our traffic study was that people on Willow and people on Bruce are also going to visit, so we pulled traffic off of those roads as well, which once you added that traffic, it did make us exceed 15% on Air, but not if you took just the traffic from Air, just the traffic from Bruce, and just the traffic from Willow. We did not exceed 15%, so that's what we explained to Green. Mass DOT has looked at our traffic study, reviewed it, I had the letter at the last meeting, we submitted it with our response to comments, they had no comments on that, they have approved
Right.
it and said it's minimal
Right,
impact.
and because of that, that's part of why I was asking whether or not, because that's exceeding, whether or not we needed to identify that as a determination that we were accepting.
Oh,
or-
meaning
or-
it's up, because they put it in the board's hand and
Right,
said, are you
exactly.
okay with this? So I
Right,
guess you
right,
have
and
to
are we, and if we're
decide.
okay with
I
it,
thought you were at
does
last
that
meeting, but-
constitute a waiver, or do we just have,
Persuasive.
Thank you very much.
or do we just put it in as a determination that this is found to be okay by us?
I mean, I didn't think there was a waiver or anything needed. I think
Okay.
you guys just needed to decide whether or not
Okay.
you were okay with our
Okay,
explanation.
I just needed to make sure about that. Thank you. And then, my only other comments, I think, are related to, oh, there is one more. It's peer review number 58, and this is a question really for us as a board. If contaminated soils are found on site, the applicant cannot use infiltration bumps. The applicant.
BMPs.
BMPs.
Best management practices.
Yeah, the applicant will need to install liners and under drains for all stormwater treatment practices. Those will significantly change their stormwater and drainage design. And Green said we defer to the board if this is a condition of approval or if this needs to be submitted prior to approval. So,
And I'm here from Green.
fabulous.
I mean, this is another thing that if contaminated soils are found and you'll have to redesign the entire storm drainage system, you'd be back in front of us with a new site plan eventually.
We would, if that's the condition the board wants to put on, we have no issue with that.
But I mean, that's realistically what would happen if you have to change a bunch of stuff.
Absolutely, and they are currently doing some geotechnical work, some environmental work out there. It's a process.
Right, okay.
Okay. You good?
I'm good.
Everybody else good?
I have items for conditions, but we'll get to that.
Well, I'd like to close it and vote, so if you have any other conditions or items.
Well, I mean, the, the conditions are essentially off of a lot of what Green had identified. So, one I have from some meeting notes to add a bike rack, so I think we needed to add that in.
Can I have it?
Yeah, and then requesting condition on peer review number 24 for the manhole. MassDOT approval is needed for that, so. And then also number 26, the catch basin, again, MassDOT approval is needed for that. I think under number 10, under condition number 10, which speaks to the sewer, let me see if I can find it real quick. It says the property owner applicant shall obtain approval from the Neshoba Board of Health for the septic design. Under peer review 31, it talks about ensuring that the inverts are part of the design. So I would recommend that we just add that language into condition number 10, if you think that's appropriate.
Yeah. Once they do the septic design, they should add inverts to their design plans.
Okay.
So that the contractor can build it correctly for the plan.
Thank you. Let's see. Peer review number 39 talks about the number of parking spaces. On page 5 of the decision, it does speak to, under 3C, it says, for the foregoing reasons, the proposed impervious surface, approximately 61% of the parking, including a parking area with a capacity of 41 or more spaces is hereby allowed. If we're identifying that 41 are needed, then it should be just 41 and remove the words or more.
Okay.
Okay. We talked about the no idling signs. That hasn't been added yet to the,
He is.
it was added? Okay, I didn't see it in here. Can you
You
tell
can,
me?
yeah, I can actually show on the plan I just handed out.
Oh, on this one?
I'll show you the
Okay.
symbol.
Sorry.
And Those
Fabulous.
are the two new signs.
Of course, I'm so sorry I missed those. So, thank you. And we just talked about the geohazard under peer review number 58. And then I just wanted to ask my colleague, Mr. Yates, did you want to add anything in for number 37, which talks about trees? I know that we had talked about that
Well,
before.
they did respond to that, and we talked about fencing on the left, trees on the right, and when I looked at the site, there were more trees on that driveway up to the campground than I thought. My concern is that we just leave that driveway bare, and, because it's not the entry to a campground that you would want, that's all, so.
You mean that we not leave it there? Is that what you just said?
That this plan would result in it being bare, and I don't want, I
Yeah.
think we should.
So should we condition it then to,
I don't think it's necessary. They have a landscape plan. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I believe that, you know, we've addressed the concerns, we have the fencing. You know, obviously, we're not going to be removing trees that are not on our property.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if you would need to really condition something like that.
No, I don't think we could,
Yep.
but anyway.
all right, so those are my comments and requests for conditions. Thank you.
Okay. So everything's pretty much been addressed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we're good.
yeah.
So,
Any public comment?
anybody here to speak about this? Anyone? Guess not.
I move we close the hearing.
Second.
I
All those in
second
favor
it.
of closing here, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve with the conditions that we just spoke about and all the other conditions that are on there. The barn has gone up. Somebody needs to second that, or?
I
Make
so
a
move.
motion. Second? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Delisa?
Aye.
Aye. We'll just nudge you when we need to wake you up.
No, I've been saying aye, you just can't hear me.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Where are we now? 555 Newtown Road has continued their hearing. I don't know if people are here for 555 Newtown Road, the, what's it called? Skyview Lane Residential Development. That's been postponed till July, Marn?
Yes, they requested a continuance to July, actually,
Remains
voting
level.
on
Continuing it?
continuing now.
I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 555 Newtown Road, the open space development, till our July 6th meeting. What time?
I think we can do that one at 7.
Okay. Second. Anyone want to second that?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, we're right on schedule now, 7 o'clock.
No, Mr. Chair, we missed item
Oh, yeah, excuse me.
number 6 at
Oh,
6:30
yeah,
PM.
6:30, excuse me, I jumped that one. All right, I have to recuse myself for that one, that's why. I want to get the other one out of the way. 6:30, we have a continued public hearing. I'll go fight with Mr.
Do
Sand.
that when you closed the public hearing at the last meeting, just schedule the vote for this week.
So I can sit here as long as I don't vote, right? Either that, I can sit with Mr. Sanders in the back.
There you go.
Yes, please.
Oh, you just want to be in charge. I get it now. All right, I'll go back there and fight with George. I think quick.
Okay.
And then we can get by.
Okay, good.
Okay, so for application 265 Foster Street, we also have our colleague Delisa Laterzo on, so we have 4 members here for this particular item. The planning board has reviewed applications over the last few meetings for development of paved outdoor storage areas at 265 Foster Street. The public hearing was opened on March 9th and closed at the last meeting on May 18th. Today, we are deciding on the language for the decision and voting the decision. I just have a couple of small minor ones. Anybody else have any comments to begin with? If not, we'll just go through it real quick. Delisa, did you have any comments on any of the
No.
pages?
Nope.
Okay. Page 1, obviously, we just need the dates. There's actually 3 dates on there, so we will need to add another date. On page 2, under reference plan, I believe that date should be May 15th instead of May 5th for the date of the site plan stormwater, because those were
Yeah, and I'll
updated.
add the standard wording as
Yes.
amended.
Okay, that would be great. And then the public hearing was closed. I believe those motions were made by Jeff and seconded by Bartlett. The date we deliberated, and then on the last page, under condition 11C is in cat, it says the planning board shall be notified of items to be stored once a tenant is secured. And I think the language under 173-62D should be used there in terms of then if there are tenants that they come back to and tell us about that are going to be storing any sort of hazardous materials, and obviously we have to do something about that. But that would be the only other language I would add to that particular one.
And you said that was number 10.
Yes,
Okay.
no, that's number 11C.
Two different issues. Number 10 was the hazardous materials. Number 11C is what is going to be stored in the paved parking area, whether or not it's hazardous. Presuming it's not hazardous.
Right, presuming it's not hazardous, but once they come back. So what you're saying is that number 10 already covers it,
It covers the use or storage of hazardous materials.
even for any future tenant?
The special permit does not include use and or storage of hazardous materials. Any
Okay.
such use can be considered under a separate application to the planning board.
Okay. All right, then we're good.
Okay.
So if there aren't anything else
I
that,
move we approve the special permit, the Water Resource District special permit, site plan amendment, and stormwater permit at 265 Foster Street.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm an aye as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Chair, we're done.
I could go back on the XR.
Oh, gosh.
So, throwing a curveball.
Next month will be fun when summer's closed.
Pardon?
Next fun, birthday trips will be fun when summer is.
So we have a 7 o'clock MBTA commuter discussion, development scenarios at the commuter rail station, Innes Associates. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members. For the record, Emily Keys Ennis of Ennis Associates. I'm here with Chris Hurlick, my colleague from RKG Associates. And I see Maren is going to be our able coordinator for the presentation today.
So when last we met, we asked you to give us build-out scenarios for the couple of different parcels, and we're going to walk through that tonight.
We are going to walk through that tonight. We also had some confusion, I think, from members of the public, and rightfully so, on the math of Section 3A. So I do have an opening section on that we can go through at a high level. Obviously, if you have any questions, we can go back through that. But Maren, if you'll advance to the next slide, please. So you can see that there, just for a review of the process and where we were before, up to the last meeting, and then we'll talk about tonight's tests as well with you. So next slide, please, and next slide. So this is, again, just the goals that we had for the process. I know you all are familiar with them, but we like to repeat them so that people who are coming new for the first time can see this. So we're actually doing tests of your existing zoning district, which we found did not, or at least this particular area does not comply, trying to figure out which changes could bring you into compliance and what that would mean in terms of community support and what those changes are. So next slide. And this is where we are in the process now. So we've completed a couple of public meetings. Obviously met with you prior to this, and so we're now, as you ably summarized for us, Mr. Chair, at the point where we're doing another round of test fits to give you some options to consider. The next slide. So on February 9th, we had a public meeting that reviewed past planning efforts for King Street Common and Littleton Station, and again, looking at both of those as potential options for complying with the MBTA Communities Act. We ran the compliance model, which is a model that DHCD developed to evaluate compliance for all 175 communities, and looking at a couple of different possibilities, and then provided an interactive discussion of housing types. Next slide. And then on March 8th, we took those, the results of that discussion of housing types and applied them to a couple of different test scenarios to see what that would look like, get some community input on it, get obviously your input on it. And it was after that meeting that we, got direction from you to look at some other options. And again, there was some unfamiliarity with some of the participants, and not unsurprising considering how new this is for everyone. So we just wanted to go through those requirements again. Next slide, please. So in looking at the math of Section 3A, this you probably may remember this from the very first presentation we did. It looks very confusing. And so if you go to the next slide, Maren. We decided to break this down into an easier, we hope, to understand for all of us. So there are some key data points that come into this that are provided by DHCD, although they now have a new name, Executive Office of, I think, Housing and Livable Communities. So eventually I'll remember the acronym for that, but for now let's go with DHCD. And then there's some key calculations that come out of the data points that they gave us that you have to match. So just watch the colors as we go through. Next slide. So the key data points is that you have a certain number of housing units now. That's in the blue, and it's from the 2020 census. You have a developable station area, which is the area within the quarter mile of your station of 244 acres. DHCD has required, based on the legislation, 50 acres of a minimum land area, and that's the lesser of 1.5% of your developable land within the community, or 50 acres. So you're at 50 acres. And then we're going to talk about how this works into the key calculations. So next slide. So this shows your half-mile radius with the 244 acres, and so this is all the land within that half-mile radius. You can see the T-stop in the middle there. Next slide, please. Now, it is unfortunately hard to read on the screen, as I found when I looked at my laptop versus my desktop. It's a little hard to read on my laptop as well, so we'll talk about making the colors a little darker for you and resubmit the presentation. It's always a problem when you're working with screens. But basically, the shaded area, you kind of see the diagonal lines in there, are something called excluded lands, and those are taken out of the developable land. So when we start getting into the math, just note that you have the total developable land, which is that 244 acres. When we start looking at a parcel by parcel basis, some land is excluded land. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see there's a green shade in there now. One of the items that is in excluded land is protected open space. So excluded land is that land that cannot be developed on and therefore is not counted towards the ability to create unit capacity. Next slide, please. So we have this, now we're starting to look at the key calculations. So one calculation is the number of dwelling units that Littleton must have. And it's the greater of either 15% of your total number of housing units, or it's, and you can see in the fine print there, or it's the 50 acres times 15, which is the density per acre, the 15 dwelling units per acre, that's the minimum, which gets you to 750, and it's the greater of those two, so you're at 750 dwelling units. And then 20% is the amount of both land and your unit capacity that has to be within the station area, so within that half mile. And you get that because you have 50-acre minimum required land divided by the 244 acres for the station area. That gets you to 20%. If you go to the next slide, please. So that 20% applies to the number of acres. So your minimum acres of 50 times 20% gets you to that 10-acre number that we were talking at the last meeting as your minimum number of acres within the station area. In terms of your unit capacity, 750 times 20% gets you to that 150 minimum number of units within the station area. And so you still have the overall 15 units per acre that you're trying to meet, but now you're also trying to meet 750 total number of units across the entire town. 150 of those must be within the station area. You have a requirement of 50 acres across the whole town and a minimum of 10 acres in the station area. Next slide, please. So that becomes important because we're looking at two different areas. One is King Street Common area, the other is the station area. As we talked about in the very first meeting, the King Street Common area actually uses up a lot of the capacity that's required. And what that means is we're now looking at what just needs to happen within the station area. And that's those 10 acres and the 150 units. So for those who are watching at home that maybe were at the first two meetings and a little bit confused about the math, that's how we get to that. And because of that, because of the density that's available at King Street Station, which we talked about in the past, or King Street Common rather, you don't actually have to get to the 15 units per acre at the Littleton Station area. You can be a little bit lower, right? Because it's the average is what you're trying to get to. So if you go to the next slide, please. So when we were looking at this for the last two meetings, we had 3 areas around the station that we were testing. And so the question is, how many units should be zoned for in this area in order that you have your King Street Common zoning, you have the Littleton Station zoning. Together, they get you to the 750 units or more. Together, they get you to the 50 acres or more, and together they get you to the 15 units per acre density or more. Next slide, please. So this is where we get into the options of how you comply. Next slide. So in February, we talked about preferred housing types. And one of the reasons for doing this is if you have different levels of density in different areas, you can have different housing types. So what we were exploring in February was the idea of the missing middle housing. So this could be from the minimum 3 units per building all the way up to, say, 8 to 12 or even 24 units is roughly the missing middle. And the minimum 3 units is how the MBTA Act, the Section 3A, defines multifamily. It's 3 units or more. So these were some of the places that we tested. Next slide, Mara. And then what we did was in March, we took those same buildings and we said, okay, we're going to test those 3 areas that you saw earlier, the yellow, the green, and the red, with this missing middle housing and see what that looks like. And the chosen sites had been part of an earlier study that I know you know about, but just to review for anybody who may be listening. So next slide. So what we did was we looked again at these 3 areas, and you can see that on their own they mostly meet certain requirements. So they're all above the 10 acres. They're all fine in terms of being within that 9 to 12 dwelling units per acre that we were looking at to average out what's happening on King Street. The SGOD District Number 2 actually failed with the potential capacity. The way we were looking at laying it out with the missing middle housing, it would fail, but the other 2 would be all right. But you can see that because they're larger parcels, they're larger than the 10 acres, in order to get to the density of 9 to 12 units per acre, you have to have more units on them, right? If your denominator is smaller, your numerator has to be larger to get to the final result. So if you go to the next slide. So in thinking about which district to test, we know we didn't need all of them. We knew in looking at the density levels we were looking at, the SGOD 2 wouldn't apply. So we chose to test SGOD 1 because of its proximity to the platform, because of the layout of its site allowed for putting this missing middle housing on in a way that was sympathetic to the existing neighborhood. And it had some options for capacity. Next slide, please. And one of the things, again, in thinking about it, is looking at the existing uses of the area. At the time, we were trying to pair residential with residential. That yellow, that dark yellow color is residential. The red is commercial. The purple is industrial. So we were looking at keeping it with the residential and kind of following along basically from the previous work that the town and the planning board had done for planning for this area. Next slide. So you see the 3 options. I know you'll recognize these, but we looked at a sort of a higher, a medium, and a lower option for this site, again, trying to meet that 9 to 12 units per acre, and options A and B, which were the higher density. We also included a small commercial cafe that could support both the effectively new neighborhood and the commuter rail station. And we talked about the options for buffers and access. So at the end of that meeting, we understood from the people who were there, from yourselves, that you'd like a direction that said, hey, is it possible to meet 150 units on 10 acres in this area? So that's the next step that we took. So, and you can see that feedback there. Next slide, please. So in looking at tonight's tests, so we're going to discuss 3 separate areas again. So this time we're going to look at SGOD District 2, and instead of the missing middle housing, we're going to up the density level there. We looked at SGOD District 3, and you're going to see that's not as big of a red blob as it was earlier. We took the parcel that's closest to Taylor and Foster. It wasn't quite 10 acres. So in order to do this illustrative conceptual test, you'll see there's a small little parcel that's now next to it. That brings it up to 10.39 acres, so we can do this test. And then we're going to show you how the SGOD District 1, the one that we tested originally, if you carved out 10 acres as a parcel, which is a big if, because it's privately owned property, how would that look in terms of development? So, and you can see with the green checks on all of these, that there are green checks on the SGOD District 1. It's just hidden a little bit with the view, but all of these would comply with the number of acres, the number of units, and the density. Next slide, please. So this is what SGOD number 2 looks like. It is a long strip of land. So the bright yellow is the building. The bright green is open space. The dark gray is parking. And you can see kind of a little pink. It goes up and then over and up. That would be a conceptual idea for a way of getting pedestrians across the tracks safely to the platform. Because originally we did not choose to test this because it's on the wrong side of the platform. And so that is a plan view of how that can work. We've set it back from the street, taking advantage of that long parcel, put the units closer to the track and the parking closer to the highway. Next slide, please. And you can see what this looks like in a three-dimensional view. So it is because you are putting more units on a smaller site, instead of it being that missing middle housing, we do have to go up. And so that's why you can now get a capacity of 150 or so units on this site. Next slide. Now, the same is true of SGOD3. We're talking about a smaller parcel, so to get to 150 units, you have to go up to a higher number or higher density of buildings. So we've got 3 buildings here. Just for the sake of the conceptual design, we've clustered them around kind of a courtyard area for them to create some green space. Now, we do have the opening out onto Foster Street. We went back and forth on this a little bit because we know that residents were concerned about traffic on Foster Street, but the logical place for an opening on Taylor Street would have been directly across from a single-family home, and we didn't feel that was appropriate. This driveway, again, this is an illustrative plan, but this driveway actually opens out not quite across from a commercial driveway, and you would be able to turn directly up to go to the commuter rail platform. So that's where the traffic would be going on that side. Obviously, that would be a left. You could turn a right and then turn again to access the highway. So just to let you know the placement that we were thinking of. You see kind of a shaded box there, and that's the existing building. This is obviously a developed parcel, but we're using it as a test. If you go to the next slide, please. You can see, actually, we've done the 3D version of the existing building, so you can see how we've wrapped the illustrative conceptual buildings around that. And these buildings are showing some step downs, as did the other. They just weren't quite as easy to see. So you can see that there's an opportunity, once you start thinking about zoning, to require maybe there are step downs from the building from the street. We've left quite a significant buffer here of trees, which doesn't render as well when you're just showing these conceptual diagrams, but obviously there would be a tree buffer. And then if you go to the next slide, please. So this is a little bit tricky because this is not, with the compliance model, with DHCD's regulations, you can't actually test and show part of a parcel, or you can't submit to them part of a parcel, right? You have to zone the entire parcel. But we know that you all were interested, and the members of the public who were there at the last meeting were interested in seeing what this would look like if this parcel was divided into, 10 acres and everything else. Now, this looks like an awkward diagram of the parcel. Just cast your mind back to that excluded land we talked about earlier. If you go up the driveway to the right, the reason that driveway is so long and narrow, yes, thank you, Maren, is because there's some excluded land there. And if that were incorporated into the parcel, it would start to change the math of how many units you need to have in order to reach the density. So what we've done is a conceptual diagram showing, going past the excluded land and basically a 10-acre parcel that would encapsulate the number of units. And if you go to the next slide. Again, you can see how this would look in 3 dimensions. In an effort to avoid the excluded land, the buildings are pushed very far back from the street, tucked along both the highway and the commuter rail. And with a little bit less of the neighborhood feel that we were getting with the missing middle housing, but it does get to the smallest number of units on the smallest site. Again, the way DHCD's rules and regulations work, the way the model works, this is not something that you could submit tomorrow. There would have to be a discussion with the property owner, and it's their property, it's up to them. But the other 2 would certainly qualify. Next slide. So just thinking about how zoning would work from now on, we've got some height variations, we've got the potential for some significant setbacks from the street, thinking about what the minimum open space requirements would be, whether or not you wanted it to be all housing, or whether or not you wanted to add some possibility for commercial development, as we did in those first 2. And then thinking about development standards. So if you wanted to go for this route, would we put in development standards for a campus-style development, have that central green that was shown in the second option, have that nice open space as part of the setback, as was shown in the first option, and then thinking about vehicular access and low-impact design. So as we're doing these illustrative studies, we're starting to think ahead to what the zoning would look like. Anything I missed that you want to add, or?
No, I think you hit all the key points.
And I'd just like to say that Chris did all the key designs, so. So with that, I think what we're looking at from you tonight is kind of a direction for our next steps. Just in looking at the schedule, we're due to submit draft zoning, I think about mid-July, so would love to have, and that's the original schedule. Obviously, it can be changed based on your needs, but just sort of reverting back to where that should be. Love some direction from you, if not tonight, relatively soon. If you want some more time to study it, again, it's your project and your schedule, but wanted to submit this to you now and just get your feedback and any discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board have any questions first before I open it up to the public?
I think I had questions as we went along, and then you subsequently answered them all. So, well, my only comment is, in a presentation, ultimately, I think we need to go more into the King Street thing, and there's a lot of purposes of that, because people are aggregating that project and this project, and, there's not happiness with that. And King Street is approved, and it's allowing us to go light on this project.
I would agree with you on that. I think, our focus for the last two meetings has really been on this one, but I would agree, once the next step should include a deeper discussion about how the two of them work together.
Right.
Bartlett?
No, I can't think of any questions. I'm just thinking about density and building size, and with the smaller lots and the number of units, you're stuck with high buildings.
Yes.
And that's gotten pretty far from the middle housing that we were looking at last time.
Can I talk about that for
Yeah,
a minute?
sure.
Because one of the other goals is that we create, the missing middle affordability.
Right.
And I think we can say in this particular climate that while, what we saw as like sort of aggregated single-family homes is not an affordable option for building. And so one thing we could think about is that these, more flat styles have more of a chance at getting something that people could afford. I mean, instead of a $700,000, $800,000 thing, $400,000 thing. I don't know, based on my experience with what's going on in building now, I think that's a way, I hear you, because we saw these other attractive things, but that attractiveness comes at a price, and it may not be what our goal is with this project to fill in a gap in the town. But anyway.
I think these tall buildings work
And
better.
to add to what Jeff was just saying, and also what Bartlett was saying is, on one hand, I would like to see more, we talked about townhomes and, again, that middle housing, but then that would require a lot more acreage, which we know people are against. So I'm kind of in the same boat, where I'm thinking we need to just have higher density on smaller footprint.
See, I don't agree. I think the way we looked at it the first time, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had talked about breaking Area 1 in half and putting smaller houses, three units up on half of that land, so that we had housing that looked like the housing all around it, not high-rises, but that conception, and that gives us a better option to be able to do more affordability if you're doing 4 units at the same time rather than go the high-rise. I don't think anyone really wants to see high-rises there.
High-rise
Well, we're not talking
is
high
overstating
rises,
it.
let's
Yeah.
not, we're not talking
But
skyscrapers.
but also, so as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we add, say we do a 20-acre parcel that we zone, we have to allow for more housing.
You're still going to have to get to the 9 to 12 units per acre, right?
So that means more housing,
Right.
double
Right.
the amount. Now, there are constituencies in the town who would like to see more housing, you know. I'm looking at you. But I don't know if they would prevail, you know, so, I don't know. And the other thing is, we're not designing a project.
No,
So there could be a project that has some, you know, stack flats and some townhouses and some, you know, there could be,
Right.
you know, within that 10
we're,
acres.
we're rezoning.
We're
that's
just
all.
zoning.
Yes.
So again, I get back to what I thought we had talked about, you cutting that first parcel in half, or whatever we needed, what was it, 13 acres? In order to get to where we're at.
10 acres.
10 acres.
10 acres.
10
So
acres.
we started about 35 acres, so that was
Mhm.
the last set of images that Emily talked about was the cutout, the 10-acre cutout.
Right.
And there, depending on how we want to approach things, there might be ways of putting some somewhat smaller buildings on there, but as you can see, you do wind up losing out on some of the shared open space that might be available. Parking becomes, the more buildings you have, the less efficient parking becomes. So the actual opportunities for squeezing smaller structures on that 10 acres in that site in particular, and SGOD2 as well, is quite limited just geometrically. It's a tough issue.
But, so then why don't we do it for 15 acres? Do we still get to our 9 to 12 if it was 15
Well, we
acres?
have to then zone for more units. than
Not
what-
necessarily, we could
Yes,
still
you
do,
9 times 15 to 12 times 15 versus 9 times 10 to 12 times 10. You
It's
know,
all based off the
Except you have
math.
to get 150.
right.
That's why I wanted to focus a little bit on the math, because it gets, you know, we could do a chart. Maybe
So
so.
the
If it's
more,
15
the
acres
more
instead of 10,
acres we zone,
yes.
the more units we have to provide.
75 more units, give or take.
Mhm.
Yes.
So I have a question about, if we could go back to page 28, because I'm very curious why you didn't take a look at that other parcel under number 3.
Let's go back to the image. I think that we'd be happy to talk about that, because we actually went back and forth, so.
Because that particular parcel has 19 acres on it, less whatever excluded land is on there. But that could actually be an individual parcel that could allow for that mixed housing or the middle-income housing,
But there would be more units.
but maybe not that many more because it's not that many more acres.
So the
Wait.
reason we didn't test it, just so you know, is because our understanding was you wanted to, you collectively, not you personally, wanted to test the minimum number of acres. So that parcel at 20 acres wouldn't be the minimum number of acres. So it was the one next to it that we tested with that little piece. That got us to just over.
But
What
if it
if
has
you-
a lot of excluded land on it already, so
It
that's
does,
one of the
yeah.
reasons why I think it would actually be
Mhm.
something that we should still test, because I'd like to know what
Anna,
those numbers
Anna,
are.
which one are you talking about? 2
So-
or 3?
So if you look at the red one,
This one?
Yeah.
yes,
okay.
it's that one that Maren is
Next to it,
circling.
It's the other
Because
office.
originally, that was part of the SGOD number 3, but they split it because it's actually 2 separate parcel
Right.
owners.
But do you think, like, I personally think that's too far away from the T.
Yeah.
I don't. I think actually that it's perfect because it has infrastructure in place for any future development. It also keeps the traffic away from the actual train station area.
But that's,
We did, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was some talk about wanting to capture that corner of Foster and Taylor as well, because that had been discussed as a mixed use. We only tested residential. So that was the other reason we didn't choose what is effectively the middle of that section rather than capturing the corner.
So-
Well, it abuts
You're right, we could.
residences though, so if you go back to the
there's
color
2
chart.
members who sort of want to see this expanded acreage
Right.
option, expanded acreage on the, you know, the yellow,
Right.
and then maybe this other parcel, and then maybe what, you know, we have to expand units.
Mhm.
But maybe it would allow for some more traditional housing, I don't know. But maybe, so that's maybe something we should present to, I personally think the green should be, you know, I think it's really cynical to put housing there. It's just train, Route 2, 495, it's not good.
Somebody's going to have to put some soundproof windows in that building.
Well, the previous hearing was someone who bought that as as a warehouse use, and then.
Right.
So isn't that part of the issue too? Isn't the state going to come back and say, you can't do the green unit because there's already a building up there and we know nobody in their right mind is going to knock. It has to be viable. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. And
It would, the spirit of the law, the spirit of the law is that it should be viable. I think, your discussion of, we've tested 10 acres, right? We've tested 30-odd acres. We could go back and look and split the middle and say, what does it look like if it's 20 acres? I don't think that would be too much of an issue. Chris's point was that, there's not a ton of excluded land on that middle site, so
About 4 acres, I think.
out of the.
Right, so that makes it a 15-acre parcel.
15-acre
Four-
parcel,
14,
so,
15
Do
acre
a
parcel.
15-acre study on the yellow also, just
Yeah.
for.
But the problem with the orange site is there's 2 buildings on that as well. So then you're going to run into the same problem. Is the state going to say, the 2 or 3 buildings?
No, but
I
that's
think it's
okay,
an
because
No,
they're,
it's-
they're saying yes to, if you look at some of the other communities that have already gone through this process and are ahead of us, there are existing buildings in
Oh,
places
yeah.
that are being zoned.
There's not a problem with zoning for existing buildings. You
Right.
do have the question, I think, in many communities that have a lot of office, of how sustainable is that office over time? The state does understand that uses change over time. So I don't think it would be a problem to rezone any one of these, given that you've got something else. If this was all you had, they might raise a few eyebrows, but I don't think it's a problem with
we,
this.
are tearing down office buildings, the Amazon, the this, the that. So tearing down an office building is not something that hasn't come to this town.
Right.
I mean, nice office buildings,
Mhm.
so.
Let me ask you guys a question. I mean, ultimately, we want to get something passed by the town. Which one do you think would be most likely to be approved by our town residents? Red? The red zone, District 3?
I think so, too.
I do, I'm sorry?
I do, too.
Yeah, I think red would. So why don't we just focus on that?
Well, Dilly, I agree with you, but I also think we need to work toward the spirit, we have a vacant parcel next to a T station with a parking lot. And we're
Okay,
just
but-
gonna
but I
build
just heard-
single-family homes there?
No, but I just heard you guys say that you didn't think that that was a good place to put, that who wants to be right next to the T station?
Well, no, I was talking about the green.
The green's right next to the trans.
Oh,
You could,
okay.
you have enough,
Okay.
you have 34 acres there. You could move
Right, right,
whatever you
right,
do
okay.
there and build
I'm sorry, I
nice
missed that.
little 4 units, 5 units, 8 units in the yellow.
I mean,
So, Jeff-
we could, if we don't use the yellow, we could establish an overlay district to allow for a little higher density to get this, townhouse type thing. In addition to, I don't know. And then the other thing is, how do we, how does the A&R work? You go to the landowner and say, well, if you do the A&R, maybe we can get this zoned this way, but if it doesn't get zoned that way, I guess you could just have 2 parcels. I don't know.
So
It's
why is destroying that why is destroying the yellow parcel that has a bunch of trees more viable to you?
It is, well, it will be developed in some way, because someone owns it and they're entitled to develop
It's
it.
industrial right now. You'll
I
get
get that.
another Amazon building out there right now if you don't put housing.
So,
Well, I understand that's the threat.
And that's something that the neighborhood should consider. There might be a use that's not
Right.
sympathetic to, the residential would be. I think that you could make an argument that just zoning 10 acres of it and leaving, maybe the rest of it gets,
Open
open
space.
space. There could be, a real buffer, and, we talked about a path connecting, to Harwood. There could be some good things about
Can you
it that
put
would
the-
benefit the whole community.
The drawing that has all the housing around it up there again.
So one of the things that I would envision at some point us doing, I think it would be very helpful, is if, and this can go back and do that other red parcel and get us the test results for that, is to be able to put these scenarios out there to the residents and almost, I wouldn't say vote, but essentially what we need that input, because some people might be willing to do what you say. They might also say no way. They might also be willing to do the stacked housing. I mean, we don't know what all the residents say right now. All we've heard is some of the more vocal residents about what they want and don't want. But we do need it all.
We need to bring in, I don't know if you guys can do this, but some kind of economic, these more dense units are gonna be such and such per square foot, and, therefore it would be this. I mean, you wouldn't, you don't have to do developers pro forma, but, okay, we should do that. And, the fact that townhouses are gonna be much more expensive, and, and so people who are anxious to participate in this housing, they might have an opinion. And the other thing is, that I don't know, I think there could be some, I don't know, that's just another factor.
I think the other thing we need to think about is the red unit and the green area. Those are apartment complexes. They're for rent.
They could be condos.
condos.
They could be condos,
There's
yeah.
no ownership requirement or assumption in
I get
the
that, but
legislation, yeah.
what I was gonna say is the yellow ones, if we kept them all to the 1 and 2 story, low, 3 to 5, there's a better possibility that they could be senior housing, they could be, and that's where you come in to tell us what those units could
Well, I
possibly
think the
cost.
flats are a better option for senior housing. Because you have elevators, you have structured parking, probably. You have an overall maintenance scheme, which would not exist if you have your own home, and seniors, I mean, I'm getting to the age where I don't know, fix my home.
But the other problem we have in Littleton is we don't have any middle housing here,
Well,
nothing.
I guess my point is the middle, what do you, okay, so that's true. What do you consider middle housing? And I'm telling you.
First-time home buyers,
Yes,
empty
but
nesters.
first-time home buyers cannot afford these lower density projects.
But that's not a lower density, that's 150 units, that's a bit higher
No,
density.
no, the ones that you presented at the last time. Those lower units are, I mean, I'd be curious what Joe Gatalo's gonna sell those two little 1,400.
But look what we just did at Cooper Farms, and we had smaller units there, we had them as a condo complex, basically is what
And
they
those
were.
700,000.
No, they weren't, they were at four something when we did it.
Well, when you did it, but
5
when they
years ago.
sold, they were
Well,
700.
yeah, okay, everything's got.
So one of the things.
Let's go
I-
back. I'd like to go back for a second to what Anna just said, which I think is a really good idea. I think we need to present the options, if it's having charrettes again, or just, and open it up to the residents. And let's find out which option do they prefer. Because we have to do something. I think we all kind of know that we don't want to lose all of the grants from the state. So let's get people's input.
So I think we can agree that the green one is probably the least, so if we can concentrate on the orange and the.
So you probably saw us whispering here while you were having your debates, we were having a deliberation. I think there's two things that we can do. One is, we were talking about how we show sort of a middle ground between the two, right? You've got all low, you've got all high. If we look at the yellow and the red, what do we get if we search for a combination of the two? I agree on the green, I think we can take that out. I think the other thing is you were looking for input from the public. We've had, you had your own planning process for this area a while back, so you've got that input. We've had 2 meetings so far. I think what might be good, though, especially as we're getting into the summer months, and people aren't good at attending meetings in the summer months, and I don't blame them, we could certainly, once we've done that middle option, we could set up an online survey that could also be a paper survey that can get pushed out to everybody. And just, we can use it to show the images, have some text explaining what each means, and get a temperature check from the results of that. And then once we see that temperature check, if you feel that we need to have another in-person, that's fine. We'd be doing that as developing the zoning anyway. There's some components of developing zoning that we can get started on while this is being
Mara,
done.
can you
but
put
does that make sense?
The one that shows the whole neighborhood, all the housing and everything else around it, the one that was done in orange. And the only reason I want to go back to that is because the residents on Foster Street were all concerned that they wanted something that was in keeping in the neighborhood there.
Right.
And that's if we're looking at the yellow one, and that's what I'm talking about right now, there's housing all around it. They would like to see smaller housing, maybe not gargantuans like over at Durkee, but something smaller that's more affordable. Doesn't have to necessarily be senior housing, but empty nester. No,
But
well, you had one that showed all the.
You
well,
both said that if you're talking about, the red parcel is the one that's going to be, the Foster Street people are gonna want, because
Right.
it's away from.
Yeah, but I think that's a fallacy. Everyone keeps saying, if you live in there, you're not gonna go down Taylor Street. You're gonna go down Foster Street. So Foster Street, whether it's at the top or the bottom, isn't gonna make a difference. There's still gonna be traffic going up and down
You can
Foster
say
Street.
that,
But that's the way it is.
You know,
And the sky was falling when we did Durkee. Oh, we're putting 75 units up there. Nobody even knows Durkee's up there.
well, the argument would be that, if you're tearing down an office building that already had traffic counts and cars going, that it's not going to significantly change what is existing there. However, and I'm not advocating, I'm just saying that the argument is that, but the yellow one, it's less clear because there's nothing there now. Where this office building that would be zoned is there, and it once had, hundreds of cars, going in and out. And, that's hard to argue against.
I get that, but you also have to remember that's zoned industrial. Amazon and all these other big companies are still looking for space all over the place. What's to stop that from a 200,000
I
square foot?
agree with you, I agree with you.
So I think if you take it out of that scenario and make it residential, then you're a lot better
I'm
off. That's
just
the only-
going, we're talking about what can be approved.
I get that. And all we're talking about is a zoning change, and then the hard work comes years later after that. So,
So, can we do something real quick, Maren? Would you be able to find the slide that has photos of the different units on them? Because I want to make something really clear. Yes, thank you, on this one. I agree with you, Mark. Everybody would like to see this kind of housing, like the photo on the left. My guess is that, I don't know, there's probably 6 units in one of those buildings or something like that.
Well, I think those are townhouses.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And we would like to see stuff like that here, right? And it has greater density to it. But the problem is the math doesn't work. And the math, if I'm correct, is based off everything you took us through earlier, and that's the requirement, that we're required to have a certain percentage based on acreage.
You might
And-
get closer to the math with the red, the far
Yes,
right.
exactly.
which is,
I think you'd get closer to the math with the second one in from the left. 4 unit, 5 unit.
That's 4 units.
Yeah,
That
4
that
unit.
particular one, second in from the left, yeah.
If you could figure out if you could get all of that stuff on 12 acres and then have a ton of open space and everything else that goes with it on a 34-acre parcel, we should at
But you
least. look at
can't.
that.
You
I
have
think
to
you
have
can.
higher density.
You have to have that, so that whole parcel needs to be tested. So there
Okay, but why
is,
couldn't it be diverse housing? You could have some
Yes.
townhomes, and you could have maybe one building that's 5
I think,
stories.
I think that's
just-
what we're probably. gonna
I
have to
think
look
that's
at.
what we were talking about earlier, and looking for a sort of a middle ground between them, is that you could have a combination of the higher and lower, because remember, at that point, you're looking for total number of units, but you're also
Right.
looking at the average density. So if you've got
And-
tall in
and
the
that-
back and shorter towards the front where people are going to see it, that could be an
But
option.
what's the problem with, I know the state, we're trying to do the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Supposing it was 200, what's the big deal that it's 200 units down there as
So,
opposed to 150?
I think that there are
Because
people who would
the
advocate
residents
that.
are gonna
but
fight it.
We were looking at 500 units down there originally. We were looking at high, remember
It
when we
was
originally?
before 550 came.
Yeah.
I get that, and
There's a significant backlash.
I get that, but back then when we were looking at high rises, which is 2 of the 3
Yeah.
things you were talking about. We're talking apartment complexes down
I
there.
think we
We're not
need
looking
to
at that
go in-
anymore.
Well, I
Mark,
think there
I
will be an element of that.
There might be one building, and then the rest might be all.
I mean, in an ideal world, folks want 150 that look
Right.
sort of like that.
Yeah, give us
Yes,
that.
I guess
Give us
that's the
that.
marching order.
That is not going to happen
Yeah.
on 10
So
acres.
how do
Yeah.
we,
How do we get to it? So
Yeah.
we don't-
I
and
think
on
the way we get to it is by going in with the minimum. I say we cap it at 150.
Oh, I have no problem leaving it at 150. My point is, if you could get something nicer and it had to be 170, give us a couple of.
So then there's the issue of this overall parcel, the land, we can't zone,
You cannot zone.
you have to
parcel
zone by
also.
parcel, not by just
Yes.
a magic line.
which, by the way, as a planner, I'm fine with, because every time I get communities split parcels,
Yeah.
I start to get hives, so.
No, I
it's-
dealt with, I'm
And,
dealing
and,
with
and
one
that
now.
is, by the way, as a former planning board member,
Yeah.
as well as a consulting planner, split parcels are not fun to deal with, so I definitely support
I
that
mean,
ruling, yeah.
the carving out this higher density on this 35 acre parcel with some other, some other community benefits and everything could be, nice. But it depends on the land.
All right, can we open it up to the public, in case anybody actually wants to? Yes, sir, name for Myron, please. Oh, you could have sat there and talked.
For the TV folks.
Oh.
Mark Rambacher, 205 Hartwell. I really think you need to do the math on this, because I do the right calculations. 550 is 40 acres and 750 units. Is that roughly correct? And 410 is 250 units on 4 acres, roughly. If you do the math, that's over 25 units per acre. I think you can do like 8 over the train station, and you will be just fine, and still hit the density you want. I really would love to see the math worked out on this. It's an easy spreadsheet to calculate this.
Okay.
And I also think if you try to build high-rises there, it's not going to
No, I
pass.
don't.
You're going to have to do something more than the townhouses.
Mhm.
And I agree that the green area should probably be dropped, but I would also say that the other red area probably should be considered.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So,
Come on
so
up,
then, from
George.
your point of view, can we just be explicit about?
Yes, I think we add Plymouth Street into the map so that everybody can see the whole picture.
Right,
Yeah.
and how it worked, because the mystery so far, it's not the 150 units, 10 acres, it's the,
It's the rest of it.
it's the density and all that stuff,
Go ahead, George.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I'd like to ask a few questions here. One is, what is the repercussion with the state in the town of Littleton if the town of Littleton says, we don't want that down there? What's the repercussion that Littleton has to deal with?
We'll never get a dime from the state. We have
Wait a minute, I'm asking.
Oh, okay.
Through
Go
you,
ahead.
Mr. Chair, over here,
Okay.
because they're the ones supposed to be the expert
Okay.
giving us advice here.
All right, I'm just going by what Myron tells me, and she's the expert. Go
Okay,
ahead.
well, whoever want to answer the question, I want to know what the repercussion is if the state, because
Do you want to answer? Go ahead.
So since you're pointing at us, sir, the repercussions are, as the chair mentioned, there are certain grant programs that the state has said that communities who are not in compliance are no longer eligible for those state grant programs. One of them is MassWorks, which is an infrastructure grant that a lot of communities use to do street infrastructure and similar. So depending on the community, it can be a significant financial grant.
Several millions.
Myron, how much do we have in front of MassWorks right now?
Just put in an $8.5 million ask.
okay, that's good to know, because there are people that are talking about it, they don't want it. And I think that they need to understand, if we don't, which I had mentioned to someone else, and I had told them, I said, well, I think we'll have the state not giving us everything that we probably could get. And they said, well, what is the state going to do? Penalize us because of that? Well, that's exactly what they're going to do.
That's exactly it.
As far as the density go there, I think that between the 550 and the 150 that you're trying to get down there, I think the most important thing is that neighborhood of Foster Street down there. We need to make sure whatever density that we're going to use, that they're happy with that height down there, building down there, because you don't want area to become a clutter where that you got all these things up and they look up and you got the houses over here that are small, and people already griping about the height of the buildings up here on 550 that's going to be put in up there. So I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing, those people have to live down there. And we need to take in consideration how they feel about their surrounding and how it affects environmental wise as well. So, you know, some people say, well, I was getting sun. Now you put this building up here and it's too tall and I don't get any sun anymore. So there you go with the environmental deal. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
We did a balloon test for 550 King, and I was skeptical about the heights that were proposed there. And it was set up in the middle of the parking lot on a 40-acre parcel. And it was really illustrative. It really looked pretty small compared to, especially compared to a 2,000 car parking lot. But I don't know if could we do that to, you know, because I personally don't think that even a 10-story building would be very visible from Foster Street. I just don't think so. I mean, you're talking about distance, you're talking about trees, you're talking about a grade change, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But, you know, if we decided to go with that parcel, we might have to do something like that. Or limit the height or something.
Could we approve more than one parcel? This is just,
Sorry?
could we approve more than one parcel?
Oh, not only can you do that, you can approve more than one sub-district within.
So if we decided to do both parcels and then take a look at whichever one came in and we liked, we could pick that one, right?
Right. You could, so again, you know, you already, with King Street, you've already got a certain amount of density. With this, you're looking at another amount of density. You can also change the density, like, for example, if you wanted to do red and yellow, they could each be different densities as long as the average comes to that 15 units.
But
per
how about if
acre.
we approved 150 on the red and 150 on the yellow, and then they had to come before us and we had to make our final decision?
Oh, I see what you
can't-
mean. Yeah, no,
You
no,
can't-
you're not going to be
We
able to do
don't
that.
have two
Yeah.
bites of the apple,
No.
just one?
Not like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Just
you
check.
have to, with the 150, they have to be on a contiguous parcel or not.
No, it's the 5 acres contiguous parcels.
So you could do
Yeah.
2 5-acre projects.
You could do that.
Yeah, you could do that.
If you have the right sort of parcels in that
Yeah,
area.
but that kind of
And they
defeats the
didn't
purpose.
have excluded land, which is going to change your
Right.
denominator and et cetera. There's more math
Okay.
involved.
But you have to have
Yes.
minimum 5 acres, so we're
Yes.
talking about at best 2 5-acre parcels. And anything more than that, then we have to add.
Anyone else before we close? No, you already said one. One, all right. All right, you can do one more.
Sure. Don McIver, 43 Foster Street, and where I'm in Foster Street is closer to Fay Park. But there's incredible traffic that comes from the train station, and I well understand people's concerns about all the traffic on Foster Street. And sometimes it's impossible to have one's driveway, especially when the trains come in. And this is quite a distance from where the train station is. Yeah, I looked carefully through the presentation for this evening. I think it was very good. It's quite an improvement over what had been done previously. And I've attended the forums, and especially the last forum where there were a lot of very upset people at the different tables. And I was mostly observing to see what people were saying, how they felt about it. And there was concerns about possible litigation, about organizing neighborhoods and so on. And you go down Foster Street, you do see signs showing concern about what happens there. I think one of the chief things that are going to affect it is the traffic on and congestion as well on Foster Street. That's why I keep on pushing electric vehicles going down there, so there's less traffic there. As far as the 3 districts, yeah, I think an improvement in all of them are what was presented. And the yellow district is going to take some work, and that may be developed through a special permit where you can control it and have a little more cluster control. I do see improvement in what's presented in the yellow area. From my perspective, and what I've heard from the neighborhood and discussions is something west of the train station. West is essentially green and or red, and especially the red modified, which is 305 Foster Street, which is the building on Foster Street and the parcel on Foster Street in the corner of Taylor Street. And I think the housing forum is sort of secondary to those concerns of congestion and how people are going to react to it. As was mentioned by Jaleesa, is what is likely to pass a town meeting. And I think that's a big concern. I think the yellow parcel is going to take more work and probably has to be subdivided. It's sort of an unusual parcel, but yeah, the more land you have, the larger parcel, the more housing you have to have. And we have quite a bit on the King Street, on the common area. And so we're really meeting the intent of affordable housing. You have so much housing there, so many units, I think 800 or so, somewhere around there that's allowed. And actually that's a great place to have it towards the center of town. Someone could be carless. To a certain degree, it's walkable to every place. I mean, that's what you hope for. It's a lot there, and it's going to cost the town some, because for residential dwellings, no matter how much they pay in taxes, for the most part, on the average, it costs the town in extra services. That's just the way it is. Commercially pays its way, within reason. Actually, conservation land pays because you don't have to pay all those services. So given that, we're meeting the intent quite well, but we do have this additional requirement. You have to have at least 10 acres with 150 units. And it shows that it could be met with a green area. Granted, it's unlikely someone's going to build there, and it would take a certain person that would have certain values that would be okay being squished between the train tracks and Route 2. It's an unusual area, but it would meet the need. And you've shown on the average with King Street, you would have you could do it with 13 dwelling units per acre versus the 12 that was shown originally. So I think that was good. As far as the red parcels, there are two parcels there. The westernmost, I mentioned, 305 Foster Street, which is your District 3 modified, or going closer to the train station, 295. Those were both digital buildings. And when I was on the planning board, we'd have informal meetings with different developers who would come in and try to get them reused for commercial purposes, which is what you would hope for, because you get the tax money for that, but they have mentioned it was too hard to retrofit them. I don't know if that's true. You may find the right person for that. But choosing one of those parcels, I think, is good, because you get into sort of the sweet spot of 10 acres. We don't have 2 5-acre areas, unless you do one of the green spots, but you don't have another 5-acre area. If you have the 10 acres of 305 Foster Street, then you can confine it to 150 units, which I think is going to be a great push from the town, because we've really accommodated quite a few on the common area. So if you do that, you do have some flexibility. I know the architects have mentioned they might like to see a cafeteria or something there, or a cafe. It gives you a little more flexibility to do that. You could do some of that, whereas the green area you couldn't. So I prefer either the red area modified, the District 3 revised, or the green area, which I agree is an unusual aspect. And once again, these are limits. The zoning is the limits. As you say, we're not designing the project. Someone might come up with something creative for District 3 revised. And I know you had extended a bit to get the 10 acres in, a little bit by the ramp, but so be it. So anyway, that's my take from talking to the residents on Foster Street, having been on a planning board and wrestling with the same issues, and also attending the forum. So anyway, thank you.
So, Don,
Yes.
what I've abstracted, the main thing I've abstracted by your comments are that the parcels west of the train station
Yes.
are more politically viable.
Well, it more,
I mean, from the Foster Street.
no, and I agree. I mean,
And they're the dedicated.
it comes closer to the goals. I mean, call it politics, but it's, those are the people that are going to speak up the most, and probably people pay more attention to them. I've seen projects in other towns and so on, when the people impacted nearby, people pay attention to those people. And I look at Foster Street, yeah, it's a lovely street, but it's very contained, it's curvy, a lot of trees there. I know there's some issues about further developing Foster Street in segments. I've heard people raise that in legal terms, so I mean, that's gonna be a challenge doing Foster Street, I mean, there's just no question about it. But, it's an old community, and that's what we need to wrestle with, need to address, which is why I keep on pushing for shovels down to the train station that get the cars off the roads and get the demand down. Serve it by having multiple people in electric vehicles from the town center by the common. And I think that's a big win, and there's federal funding for that. So, that's why I push that.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Then I'll get you, George, don't worry.
No problem. No, go ahead, sir.
Chris Mountain, 104 Foster Street. Thank you for your presentation. You had mentioned reaching out to the community for a survey to get the community's sense. I would ask that, I think it's really important to understand the math involved, especially being a resident of Foster Street. Always the initial reaction is, oh, you're going to put all these units in our street. We already have traffic. How is that going to impact my daily life? But understanding the math, I think, is an important aspect to that, and will then hopefully create an educated reaction to the plans. Jumping off what Mr. McIver said, I think that Foster Street's initial reaction will be that the orange parcel is the best, with the idea that you can exit onto Taylor Street too. The idea of only exiting or entering Foster Street, from what I've talked to on my neighbors and such, is it's one of the most difficult pills to swallow on the development down there, but having the access to the two streets, while you may not go anywhere on Taylor Street, you can easily access 495, and you can easily access Route 2 immediately from that intersection. But I would think that reaching out to the community to get the information is a great idea. I just think that formatting a survey or any sort of feedback to the general public outside of the initial work groups would be a great move.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders, last one before we wrap it up. Don't worry, we have plenty more meetings.
Thank you. George Sanders, 672 Great Road. I just want to bring up to the planning is that if you put this 150 units down there, I'm concerned about the septic systems. If septic system's going to be put in down there, where is that going to, I mean, you can build a building, but you got to have space to run that many units. You got to have a septic system, or are they wanting to come in and tie into the sewer system that the town of Littleton is coming in? I think that's something that needs to be of a concern, because one, with the septic systems, they put nitrogen in the groundwater, and that's something that we have a problem with in this town. And that's why EPA now is requiring small communities like Littleton here to put in septic system, because they're trying to clean up the water. And not talking about the PFAS, but talking about the nitrogen and other chemicals that's in there. And you get nitrogen coming in from the septic system that's going into the groundwater. So we need to take that into account. Whatever we're going to be building down there, is there going to be space that's going to be allowed for this? And I would like, Mr. Chairman, if they can address something with regards to that.
So, George, we're not going to be designing these projects.
Well, I know you're not.
But the septic systems on a 10-acre site might limit the number. I mean, if that's the effect. I mean, we
Right.
talked in.
There's
You can do
certainly- there's
150,
the
but you'd
construction,
have to
yes.
find a way to do that with the set. So what is behind all this is that the actual projects that come in may not approach 150. They're going to be limited by the site constraints.
Sewage capacity, yeah.
Yeah, but we still have to go through town meeting and,
I understand that. I just want to bring up that point, because
Yeah.
I know it falls in place.
Right.
We can still zone it for 150, but if they can't build it, then.
Well, again, that's
has
the
to be
beauty
good.
of the red ones, is they already have existing septic systems for large buildings.
30 seconds, just,
Real quick.
yeah. Once again, Don McIver, 43 Foster Street, and just some of the septic stuff. I used to be on the planning board, too. I mean, on the Board of Health. We have over 10,000 gallons per day. The state does the approval, and you probably have a packaged treatment plant that happens elsewhere within the town. So, right, people have to approve something, so it'll be taken care of. The comment I wanted to make is that if you go on 305 Foster Street, the 3rd District, revised, corner of Taylor Street and Foster Street, you'll get people that will be attracted to be there by the concept of edge city. That is being on the edge of something and getting on highways right away, and they may have no concern about the MBTA. No, that's really concerning. And one of the things I did was on the gubernatorial appointee that did the redesign of Devon's, and that's one of the concerns we dealt with. Some people just want to be someplace where they can get out quickly, and so that would make it attractive. That would also make it attractive to people on those green areas. But I agree, I wouldn't want to live there in parcel 2 wedged in there. But
That clearly probably wouldn't be able to have 150 units in a real life project.
Well,
If there are wetlands there also.
Right, but you could still put in there, but then there's a question, is this viable for families? And if someone's reviewing this, what might sell our whole overlay zoning stuff is all the units we're doing downtown by the Common, and this is almost window dressing. I mean, but I mean, it's additional. We're meeting our intent mostly by what's on the Common. And, so we're fulfilling the requirement well in the intent. The question is, where do we put the last 150 units? That's required.
That's the hardest part.
So,
Thank you. So we have a meeting on the 17th, 20th, whatever it is, 20th.
I can't do the 20th.
Well, they have it they have it available on their calendar. So what would you like to do?
Well, if we have it for the 20th, can you zoom in?
I will be on the road. Possible. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, I think we leave it
Yeah.
for the 20th, I guess, yeah?
We'll have to check our calendars. Mine's sitting in the bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see if we can change it,
I
Jim.
mean, we've given you a lot more.
I think you, yes, Maren and I will talk schedule
Okay.
offline, but I think you've given us a great deal of direction. It's really helpful. We were having some sidebars also in response to the public direction that we were hearing, but I think this was really helpful, so
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Great.
May I add one final comment?
Yeah.
That is based off of some of the resident input. Is there a way to perhaps take a look at the input from, say, the abutters list, if we were to do a project like this, if we took that abutters list and somehow they were the ones that had, I don't know what you call it, a super priority to provide input, because they're the ones that are the most affected. So, in other words, there are ways to be
So
able
in
to.
terms of reaching out with a survey or something?
Yes, exactly.
contacting them
That's what I'm
directly?
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can talk about the logistics.
How would
Yeah.
you define that? There's only 6 or 7 direct abutters.
I think she's thinking of everybody on.
Everybody on Foster.
Yeah.
Give me my contact info.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll talk logistics, Maren, of how a survey would work.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's us. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did you have your hand up? Too late.